Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Mary Christian, assistant to Kathy Nelson, the founder and CEO of the Photo Managers. We're thrilled you're joining us today for the first session of Save Your Photos Month 2025. Disasters from floods to wildfires to tech failures happen every single day, and your memories shouldn't be lost with them. That's why we've created Save Your Photos Month, a global initiative to help you organize, digitize, and safeguard your most precious, cherished family memories before it's too late. Each September, thousands of people around the world participate to take actionable steps to preserve their family history. And this month, we're hosting free live YouTube sessions twice a week, right here on our YouTube channel, covering essential topics from protecting printed photos to digitizing your memories to preparing for emergencies. If you haven't already, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any sessions this month. Also, register for Save Your Photos Month to receive reminder emails and links for each session. It's free and it only takes a minute. Today's session is called Before It's Too Late, a step-by-step guide to preserving your printed photos. Rachel Arbuckle has been a certified photo manager and member of the Photo Managers since 2014. Her commitment began during the 2014 San Diego fires, when she realized how quickly precious memories could be lost. She founded 2000 Paces Photo Organizing to help people like us protect and organize our most important photos. In this session, Rachel will walk us through the essential first steps to preserve your printed photos, what to do now, how to protect them from disasters like fire or water, and practical tips to get started immediately. And also, don't forget, before she starts, download her free worksheet, put your name and email, and you'll get immediate access. This will give you some tools and information to guide you through our session today, including a free family tree you can use before or after the presentation. You can find that in our description. Be sure to ask your questions in the chat. Rachel will answer them during the Q&A at the end. And if you're inspired today, please consider leaving a comment below the video about what you've learned. So let's get this community talking. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome,
Hi.
Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's always a pleasure to provide education to those of you all over the country and around the world and representing the photo managers. So let's get started. I hope you're all excited. It drives me crazy that I can't see your faces, but I'm looking forward to the questions at the end. Know that this is really a highlight of getting your photos, your print photos organized. This could be a 6-hour session. So make sure that you have downloaded the worksheet that I've created. It's multiple pages and it will, it's got some notes and stuff that I'm going to be presenting today in the session. All right. So as Mary stated, I'm Rachel Arbuckle. I'm the CEO and founder of 2000 Paces Photo Organizing. You can see our certifications and where we've been featured, but I want to just very quickly kind of spend a moment to explain why I am so passionate and why I enjoy providing this education. So my journey and my why. As Mary stated, in 2014, our family was evacuated from a tremendous fire. In fact, the photo on this screen is a fire that my husband took. Our house is right behind this college here in San Diego. And unlike previous fires, we only had minutes to get out. And that seems to be becoming more and more common. And I worked in corporate America, had no plans on starting a company, but in that moment, the fear and anxiety that I experienced really shaped my mission and my goal to protect and preserve stories before they're lost. So as both a veteran and owner of a certified women and veteran-owned business, I really understand the importance of service and safeguarding legacies. And these values guide everything we do here at 2000 Paces. So who is 2000 Paces? Just so you know, what education and what do we do that kind of gives us the ability to present this to you. So we do have a secure and dedicated office space here in San Diego, and we've got a passionate team of trained experts. Everybody that we hire is truly passionate about organizing photos, protecting legacies, and it's just, we have a really fun work environment because we love what we do. I've created proven systems over the years, and we use advanced technologies and tools to help us organize photos for people, families and businesses. And I bring that up to say that we do assist families and businesses around the country, whether we're traveling there, they ship things to us or bring them to us. And we've got over 10 years of white glove expert services. We provide print and print and digital photo organizing, digitizing, also known as scanning, online storage solutions, photo book design, video and audio conversion, and really all the things that you need to get your memories preserved. And that is solely what we focus on, is that photo and memory preservation. So why does this matter? I know many of you are on the call and you each have your own why. And in your worksheet right at the beginning, you'll see it asks you to write down your why. But why does this matter now? Well, first of all, we're capturing more photos than ever before. In fact, it's estimated this year that globally we will take over 2 trillion photographs. I mean, that sounds absolutely outrageous, but it's an accurate, I would say, assessment. We also have a mix of print memories from our past that we've collected before the digital age and endless digital images from the present. And trying to get those to coexist in an organized collection can be daunting. And disasters are rising. It's probably one of the reasons that motivated you to come. It's estimated in last year that there were over 150 unprecedented global events like floods, fires. We've seen it here in San Diego, of course. In Southern California, we had the Palisades fire, which affected so many people, the floods in North Carolina, and this isn't going to change. So I also find it interesting that you can buy insurance for your house or your car or jewelry or even your art, but you cannot get insurance for your photos because they are irreplaceable. That's why you need to take steps to ensure that they're protected. So again, what is your why? I told you my motivation. It was that fear and anxiety of losing photos, things like my parents' childhood photos or the artwork from my children's preschool years or my grandfather's World War II journals and memorabilia. But what's your why? Is it because you want to pass down family history to generations and really connect your children and grandchildren with their roots? Do you want to honor and remember a loved one that you either lost recently or maybe somebody you lost a long time ago, and it's taken years to get the courage to open those boxes, because that can be very overwhelming in and of itself? Do you want to bring order to chaos? Let's be honest. How many of us don't want that? We all want to bring order to chaos, and this is a great way to do it. Maybe you want to save space in your home, and that's your why. You've gone through closets and you have trouble finding things because there's boxes of photos all over the place, hard drives and photo albums. Maybe you're preparing for a move and you'd like to get this consolidated. Or maybe you've moved and you still have those same boxes that have traveled with you every time you've gone somewhere, and it's finally time to do something about it. And another why might be to celebrate a milestone. Maybe it's somebody's 80th birthday, or you have a child graduating from high school and it's time to really capture those memories. I bring this up because your why will determine what you prioritize as we walk through this workflow. So without further ado, I really want to jump into kind of the heart of what you're here for, which is how to get your photos organized. So we're going to talk about practical steps, as Mary said, that you can take to get your photos organized right now. So I have put together, I like to group sort of workflows in a way that is understandable. And this is also documented on that free worksheet you downloaded. And I like to call it the transformation. So today we're going to be walking through gathering your photos, sorting and organizing those photos, how to identify them, and then just a brief overview on digitizing and preservation, because our focus is going to be on print. And after I walk through these slides, I'm going to do my best to explain the workflow. And then as I answer questions, we can talk about some specific scenarios. All right, so let's start with gather. So gather involves a couple things, starting with your photos. And the first step you want to do is move all of your print photos, your keepsakes, your memorabilia into a dedicated area of your home. And that way you can make a plan, because you need to know what you have. And I like to compare it. The best analogy for me is if you were going to clean out the cabinets in your kitchen, right? You wouldn't open up one cabinet and start pulling things out and then putting them back and organizing them. Because what if in another cabinet, you've got other coffee mugs or wine glasses, right? You need to look at everything you have before you can start really consolidating and determining what you want to get rid of or what that organization looks like. So I want you thinking about that when you think of this stage, because sometimes people will just simply grab a photo album and say, I'm going to get started. And they never really get their photos organized, and it's because they don't have a plan. So again, the first step is gathering your photos. And I've provided a list of items you might gather. And again, this list is written on that worksheet for your reference. Photo albums, of course, frame photos. And these are often frame photos that we've inherited from other people, but you might look around your house and say, you know what? My child is in her third year of college, and this is her second grade photo. I think it's time to upgrade. You might have boxes of envelopes, bags of loose photos. Of course, scrapbooks, many of us have those. Memorabilia, such as children's artwork, family history documents, certificates, awards. You might have letters, cards, or handwritten notes. We have a client recently that had some shorthand letters that her dad had written to her mom in World War II. And after we digitized those, we actually transcribed them so she can see exactly what those stories said. School and professional portraits, and then maybe travel souvenirs. Now, of course, you might have some other items, but this is something to get you started. Now, the next part of that gather phase in the transformation is to gather your tools. And I kind of want to walk through each of these, but I want to start by saying that your ideal workspace is a large table to spread out your photos and keep your tools within reach or organized if possible. It would be great to leave everything set up as you work. Now, I understand that not all of us have space in our homes, whether we have kids working on schoolwork or we're hosting, or you simply don't have the room. But I would encourage you to have one dedicated area when you gather all of these photos and you gather all of those tools. And maybe you get kind of a little box where you put your cleaning supplies or something, where all those items, so that every time you go back to organize, you're not having to reinvent the wheel, right? And that's the idea. Now, I'm going to start with the photo boxes. You can see that this photo box, and if you're on a phone, I know it might be kind of small and hard to see. I've got some examples here as well. I recommend photo boxes with inserts. You certainly can go to Michael's or your local hobby store and buy a photo box. But what happens is, with the workflow I'm going to show you, you're going to have your index cards inside of that box sitting vertically. And if you've got a large box without inserts, you'll find that those photos are going to fall over, they're going to commingle, they're going to cause chaos, and you've got to start over. So if you can buy a photo box with inserts like this, you can move them around and it keeps them really organized throughout the process. The next item I recommend that you get are pre-printed sorting cards. Now, we sell these pre-printed sorting cards here in our office, and these are simply cards that have various years on them and categories, and we're going to kind of go through these a little bit later. If you don't want to purchase pre-printed cards, you can always buy some colored index cards, but the idea is that I want you to have these as a different color because these are your main categories. And as we walk through this workflow, you're going to see how that applies. I've also provided a link, a QR code here in the bottom corner of some of these slides that will give you links to purchase some of these items, or I've also provided links to Amazon for some of them to get you started. The next item is blank white index cards. And I do specify that I recommend you have blank white index cards. Those that have the lines going through them, as I said, the way that we're going to set up this workflow is the index cards are going to be sitting up like this. So if you've got those lines on your index cards, I find it just kind of, your eyes tend to move left and right and it gets a little confusing. However, if you've got some index cards at home that you have left over from college flashcards you want to use, by all means, recycle. The next item in our toolbox is hanging file folders and a box for hanging file folders. And if you have these sitting around the house, go ahead and use them. This is meant to be a temporary location for you to organize your photos. But you will find as we go through the workflow that we're going to be putting photos behind these green pre-printed cards and in various hanging file folders based on year. And these would be for items that are larger than 5x7 that don't fit in that photo box. So having these tools prepared ahead of time is really going to give you the confidence to get through the project. Post-it notes. You can't go wrong with Post-it notes. And I specifically put the brand Post-it notes rather than sticky notes. I will tell you in the beginning, I tried to save a little money and I purchased some generic sticky notes. And I'm not opposed to buying generic items, but this is one that I think you should go for the original. I have found that the sticky notes that are not Post-it fall off of the folders and fall off the back of photos. And then you've got these Post-it notes all over the place and you don't know where they belong and you're starting over again. So invest a few extra cents in those traditional Post-it notes. I recommend a Sharpie or some kind of a permanent marker rather than a regular pen. This is not going to be to write on the back of photos. In fact, I don't recommend a Sharpie or a pen to write on the back of photos. And quite honestly, with this workflow, you don't need to write on the photos at all. This Sharpie is going to be to write on those white index cards for identification. And when you're using a thicker marker, it really helps you see things better, particularly if you've got older eyes like I do, it makes it a lot easier. The next tool that I recommend you have is simply a bin for your review items. Again, we're going to go over how you use this, but you see that I've just shown you a photo of a cardboard box. If you've got a little bin sitting at home that you can use, you just want something that's defined as your review box. And again, we'll talk about later how this applies, but it's meant to be a temporary holding place, so you don't need an archival box for this or anything fancy. And the last tool is a trash can. And you might think, well, that seems really silly. Of course, I have a trash can, but this is all about preparing your workstation. And it's very important to have that trash can, not just to throw out, sort of the plastic stuff from albums, but I'm going to encourage you to purge some of those photos that don't tell your story. So this is a reminder to have that. And these are all listed on that worksheet. Now, these tools are the ones that I really recommend that you start with for organizing print. And I find that these to be essential. However, I wanted to mention some other tools that you might decide to purchase depending on your inventory, your budget, and really how involved you want to get with your print. So a photo cleaning cloth, a true photo cleaning cloth that doesn't scratch your photos is great to have. Now, some of you might say, well, shouldn't everybody have a photo cleaning cloth? If your photos are really old, they've been in the attic or in the garage, and you find they're really dirty, I think it's a great idea to have that to simply wipe them down. But getting that cleaning cloth, really when you need to use that is before you digitize or scan your photos. And we're just talking about organizing the print. So whether you're going to be scanning them yourself or bringing them to somebody like us who's a professional in digitizing, part of our process is to get those photos clean as we go ahead and do that so that your scans look better. Next, we have this residue eraser. And if you've never heard of this, this can be life-changing for those of you that have those sticky albums or the adhesive albums. So anybody that has photo albums from the 80s and further back, you've got that plastic you have to peel off. It's adhered down, it's glued down. And when you take those photos out of the albums, oftentimes there's kind of a sticky residue behind the photos. And this eraser is designed specifically not to ruin your photos, but to rub that adhesion off. Now that needs to be done before you scan typically, but it's really important to get that residue off before you stack your photos together, because as you can imagine, if those photos start sticking together, now you're damaging your photos even further. Now, speaking of taking photos out of albums, the next tool that you might want to get as an addition is a stainless steel spatula. And we have a link for this that you can buy on Amazon, as well as the eraser, the photo cleaning cloth, and most of the items on this page. This stainless steel spatula is great for removing those photos that are really adhered into albums or scrapbooks. Because if you just peel those photos back, first of all, they're at risk of tearing. Additionally, you'll find that the photos fold over. and that's going to damage the photos as well. So using something like a stainless steel spatula to kind of chip away at getting those photos off is really helpful. A magnifying glass might be good to use, again, for those of us that have challenging eyesight. But this might be good if you're trying to look for a date that you can't see on the album, or maybe the number of candles on a cake because you're trying to determine what year, or maybe there is a street sign that has an address that's going to help you understand where you were. Nitrile gloves are great if you have some photos that are older, because all those oils on your hands are going to transfer over. Even if you don't see them, they're going to further damage, particularly those older photos. So using gloves, you can use them for all the photos, but I really recommend them for those older ones. And then lastly, a family tree. Now you'll see in the worksheet that I sent you, or that you downloaded, that I provided you a copy of just a basic family tree that you can copy and add to. Now, most of you are probably thinking, well, I know when I was born and when my kids are born and my anniversary, and probably your parents' date of birth and anniversary. But I have worked with a lot of clients around the country over the years. And once we get to our grandparents and great-grandparents, it's hard to remember those dates. So writing those down, either getting some information ahead of time from family members, or you'll find that as you're going through your collection, oftentimes there's dates and information written on the back of photos. And now, in addition to organizing your photos, you're actually creating a wonderful family tree for everyone to enjoy. All right, so now we've gathered all of our photos into one location, and we've gathered all of our tools. So we're setting ourselves up for success right away. So the next step is sort and organize. So you can see sort, I've kind of highlighted in a lighter blue because we're going to talk about that first. And you notice I've added and trash. You give me a couple of slides and I'll explain why that's there. So now that you have your photos all in one location and you've got your tools, I want you to sort your inventory into similar items. Now, there's a reason we're doing this. So you might have loose photos, and you might have a Ziploc bag of loose photos sitting over here, and then you've got half a box of loose photos in a shoebox sitting over here, and they're all over the place. And I would like to encourage you to put all those together. Now, if the Ziploc bag is labeled with a particular year, you don't necessarily need to take them out because you don't want to lose that identification, but let's consolidate those together. All your photo frames, let's go ahead and put those to the side somewhere. I mentioned slides and negatives, and although we're not going to be talking about those, I do want to mention that if you have photo envelopes that have negatives that are corresponding with your print photos, I would encourage you to keep those negatives with the print photos for the time being, because you might find that you've given away some of the print photos to other people, and you need to get those negatives scanned. But when I say put these aside, I'm talking about you've opened up a box that somebody's given you or you haven't looked at it years, and those negatives are sitting all over the place. Go ahead and create a box and put those in a pile in all the slides. Now, next we have dated or labeled envelopes, and you might recognize some of these for those of you that used to go to Walgreens or 1 Hour Photo to get your prints. You take photos and you'd be so excited and you run to get them printed as soon as possible. And most of us paid the extra couple dollars to get them duplicated as well, right? Well, oftentimes these have stamp dates on the outside of them, or you've written notes on them. There's a lot of context clues that are going to help you in organizing these. So when you put these envelopes together, whether they've got, they're from the manufacturer with the date, or maybe you've written something down on these envelopes, I encourage you to group those together. Next, you're going to sort all your photo albums. Now, you can further sort them by those adhesive albums, right, with the sticky, and the ones that you simply put in the albums. But I want you to put all of your albums to the side as well. Then there's scrapbooks. And if you can see, I realize this photo is a little small, but this is an example of a scrapbook. And scrapbooks are a little different, right? They tell a story differently than our photos do. Now, all of our photos, or most of our photos, tell a story, and I feel strongly about that, and that's why I think it's important that we get them preserved. But scrapbooks have a tendency to have multiple photos, kind of a design element to it, maybe some journaling, maybe grandma's handwritten, her handwriting that you would recognize anywhere. And scrapbooks are great to put aside because professional photo organizers have the ability to scan the entire page. And so scrapbooks might be something where you want to scan the entire page so you capture that entire story rather than taking each of the photos out. So you might decide that you want to get that done and you put these scrapbooks to the side. The scrapbooks also, because they tell a story, might give you some clues for years and who people are as you're going through some photos that you don't remember or recognize. And the last item that I recommend sorting is all your memorabilia, right? That's all the children's artwork and report cards and newspaper articles. We could do a whole nother presentation on organizing your memorabilia and keepsakes, but for now, we're going to focus on photos. So go ahead and put those aside in a bin. And you can see here, and you'll see this over a few slides, I want you to focus on original to organized. And what that means is I want to remind you that we want to get things out of that original location, the albums, the chaotic boxes, the bags, into an organized location. And we're going to talk about organizing these kind of like a funnel. And so the workflow that I'm suggesting to you helps you to get things from original to organized in steps that are going to be simple and help you feel like you're accomplishing things. So remember, that's the goal, is just to get it out of that location and to get it into this location that we're organizing. Now, we've sorted everything. So going back, we've gathered all of our items. We've gathered all of our tools. We've sorted all of our items by type. So I hope that those of you that are listening at home are feeling like, hey, I can handle this. This is something I can do. Now we're getting to the organizing. And I'm showing our print photo organizing cards, again, that we sell, but you can create these on your own if you decide not to purchase them. The reason I want to show them is to show the importance of having a plan. And this is that top part of the funnel. Organize photos into groups by year, decade, or category. And again, focusing on the original to organized. And you might see that little tree down there. And so I'm, as you can tell, big on analogies. And so if you think about it, sort of the trunk of the tree is all of the items that we gathered and put in one location. And then the branches were kind of how we sorted those items by type. And now we're kind of moving into the smaller branches. We're not quite at the leaves yet. That's the next step. But we're at the smaller branches where we're going to start sorting things by year. And when you go back to this previous slide, the idea is that once you have everything organized by type, I want you thinking about where do you want to start first. And my recommendation is always to start with something that's going to help you feel accomplished and bring some success. So you might decide to start with your photo albums. For one, they take up a lot of room. And if you're going to get rid of those photo albums, let's get that done right away. Additionally, photo albums are often organized chronologically, right? So as you're taking photos out of albums, it's going to make it a lot easier to put behind these year cards. And I'm going to explain how you do that. You also might decide to start with those envelopes that have stamps on them or envelopes in which you've written some context information. The point is that I want you to start with something that's going to help you get started off on the right foot. So if you imagine that you've got a photo album, and let's see, I've got one right here. And I've got this photo album and it's actually labeled 2000. And so as I'm opening this up and I'm going through the album and I'm removing photos and taking the photos out. Oh, we can go back to the slides. Thank you. That was just a quick example. Thanks, Mary and Rebecca. As we're taking those photos out, you can see in this third photo here an example of photos going behind 1972, right? So we grab our year card, and I'll just grab, I happen to have 1954 right here. You're going to take your photos out of the albums, and you might notice those are 1972. So you're going to take the photos, you're going to put them behind your year card, and then you're going to move on to the next step. And you might find that all of the photos in that album are all the 1970s, which is great. You grab 1971, put those photos behind that card. Grab 1972, put the photos behind that card. Then you might find, you know what, grandma actually threw some 1987 in this 1970s album. That's okay with this workflow because you'll simply grab that 1987 card, you'll take the photos and you'll put them behind the 1987 card. So remember, we're at those tiny branches of the tree where we are just starting the organizing by year when you can. Now you see, I've also got the hanging file folders there. And as you can imagine, those are going to be for any items that don't fit in that photo box. So as you're taking photos out of those albums or envelopes or boxes, you come across something that's too large to put in that photo box, you want to put it in a hanging file folder. Now here at 2000 Paces, we already have those file folders labeled by year. We're all about efficiency and we work with a number of clients at a time. It doesn't mean that you have to take the time to label every hanging file folder because ideally, this is a temporary location because you want your photos to end up in archival folders. So if you're somebody who loves to label things like I do, go ahead and make those labels. But you can also grab those Post-it notes and simply write 1972 or 1979 and put those photos in the hanging file folders. So just to kind of sum up, the idea is that you've sorted everything by item. Once you decide what group you want to work on, put the rest to the side. And as you're taking them out of that original location, you're going to simply put items behind years as you go through. Now, I imagine some of you have some questions, and I'm thinking the next slide is going to address this. What if you don't know the decade? What if you don't know the year? So our pre-printed photo organizing cards have some categories as well. And you can see these in the middle of the slide. For example, pets. These are all for those undated photos, the categories in which we don't know the date, or maybe we're just not concerned about the date. So when we think about our pets, let's think about our dogs we've had over the years. Many of us have had dogs over the years, and our furry friends mean so much to us. It's difficult to ascertain what year that photo was taken unless the dog is a puppy, which lasts about 3 seconds, or they're older and they've got, the gray fur on their face. And so maybe rather than spending a whole bunch of time trying to figure out when Sparky was 5 years old and put him under 1992, you can simply put that behind a card that is labeled by category, okay? So for example, if you have the pre-printed cards, you would label them with those pre-printed cards. We also provide some blank cards, or again, if you're using your own colored cards, they're all going to be blank and you can use your Sharpie. And I've given some examples here. Let's say you've got photos of mom, and mom was born in 1947, and you see a number of photos and they're anywhere between sort of 1949 and 1955. At this point, is it really important that you define each of those by year? Maybe mom doesn't remember, or maybe unfortunately mom's not around to provide that information for you. That's okay to create a category called early childhood. I don't want you to feel pressured that everything has to be behind a year. You can create these categories. Another example here is the late 1970s. So you're going through that album and you think, I know this is somewhere between 1977 and 1979. So go ahead and call it late 1970s. Or maybe you have a number of trips and right now you don't recall. Maybe you have an itinerary somewhere. Maybe you can gather more information. But for now, remember, we want to go from original to organized. The idea is that I want you to get it out of that chaos and put behind a category. So if that means we're going to put it behind trips temporarily, go ahead and do that. It's something we can address later as we get into the leaves, if you will, of the organizing. Now, lastly, you see I've got that review box I was talking about. And again, just a cardboard box, and I've written review on the side of it. These are going to be for those items that either you really can't ascertain a category, you can't put them behind one of these pre-printed categories, so you can't really think of a category. Or maybe you know what, if I called up my cousin or I called up my aunt, I know I could get more information, but I want to encourage you not to call your cousin or your grandma or hop on the computer to look up that information. And here's why. When I talk to clients who are working on their own photos, that is what gets them into trouble the most. You hop on the phone with your cousin, and before you know it, you're talking about plans for Thanksgiving and booking flights or a new outfit you found, and hours pass and you've gotten nothing done. That is where this review box comes in really handy and supports the idea of original to organized. So if you're going through items and you say, you know what, I need to make a phone call for this, or I need to look this up, or I'm not sure if this is important, I need to ask my husband because these are his friends, you can go ahead and put them in that review box. Now, if you want, you can add a card with some information. The idea is that I want you getting them out of that chaos and behind a card. So I hope that makes sense. We've sorted, we're organizing behind a card, we're on those little branches, and now we want to move on to the leaves. I hope you're still with me. Now, one thing that I pointed out earlier was the and trash. And the reason I have that in parentheses is the trash part, or the non-storytelling photos, as we like to call them, you're going to be working on that part throughout the sort and organize. So you might have been thinking while I was talking about taking photos out of albums and putting it behind a year card, well, Rachel, what about the duplicates or the poor quality? You are going to be assessing that as you go through this process. So let's look at some examples. Here you can see on the left side is a duplicate photo. It's an exact duplicate. And I know for some of you, you think, I just feel bad throwing that out. I just feel wrong. The idea, remember, is the goal is preserving so that these photos are prepared for any natural disaster. So you're going to be digitizing these photos. So there's no reason to keep a duplicate copy. You're just going to pay extra or take extra time if you're doing it yourself to digitize both of those. Now, the other thing is, sometimes I hear clients say, well, you know what, I'm just going to make little piles and put them aside to give to my kids. And this is your collection, and I want you moving forward in a way that you feel comfortable. But I have found that that can cause more chaos. And as an empty nester myself and the mother of adult children who grew up in the digital age, although our kids really enjoy the print photos in photo books or maybe looking through them on an online site, quite honestly, most of them don't want piles of photos, especially if it's just a group of photos that are disorganized. So I want to encourage you to throw those duplicate photos out. You can also see an example of blurry photos here. You've got a photo that's really bad quality and really blurry. You can go ahead and throw that out. I'm going to talk about in just a second why you might keep a blurry photo. And then I've got this photo of just this random guy, and maybe this is a photo of an ex you had in high school that just absolutely drove you crazy and you can't stand this guy, or maybe somebody that you don't even remember. It's okay to toss those photos if you don't remember who they are or if they don't bring you joy. And I know some of you believe in the whole Marie Kondo method. Not all of our photos are going to bring us joy, but they can evoke emotion. But I want that emotion to be something that you want to come back and visit. So for example, it might be difficult to look at that photo of grandma because she passed away, but we want to keep those photos. This ex that just drove us crazy, go ahead and toss that guy. Now on the right-hand side, you're going to see on the left an image that a client actually had us digitize. And if you go to our website, there's a whole testimonial about it. And this was a large oil painting, and this was his wife from 30 years ago. And the photo had deteriorated from sun and wear and tear. And he was tempted to throw that photo out. And so just like that blurry photo, if you've got some photos that are really special to you, but the quality isn't good, look at the difference that we were able to provide for this photo. You can see on the left is the original digitized oil painting, and on the right is that same photo restored. And this brought tears to his eyes. The idea is that in this day and age, you can have these photos digitally restored. So if you've got some photos that have water damage or were torn or are very blurry, go ahead and put those to the side and see if there's an expert that can help you get them restored. Okay, we've gathered our photos, we've gathered our tools, we've sorted, we've organized, we've trashed and purged, but now we're into the leaves of identifying. And this is where it involves a little more time and energy on your part. And that's why I compare it to that tree. I want you to get that trunk and the big branches and the little branches, and now we're on the leaves. And at this point, ideally, you've moved most of your items from the albums and the boxes, and now you've got them, let's say, and I know most of you can't see this on the screen, but now maybe you've got them in a box behind those pre-printed year cards. But we need to identify specifics, okay? So you can see on the left an example, and this is where those blank white cards will come in. And you can imagine if those vertical lines were there, how it can be a little confusing. So I just like how it looks. So on the left, you see that I've written in a Sharpie the month and day. So as I'm going through, let's say I'm looking behind the 1987 card, and I find a group of photos that I know are July 14th. So I'm going to write 1987, July 14th. Or you can see in the next couple of cards, I have event information on those same photos. So maybe I write 1987, July 14th, Jane's birthday. I want to identify those groups of photos by what information is important. And you'll see when we move on to the last stage of digitizing how this naming is critically important for those of you that want to search for your photos. The next example shows 1969 August trip to Paris. You notice there's no day there. That's okay. You don't have to have all the information. In fact, you could just write 1969 trip to Paris. Put as much information as you have. It's far better than the boxes they've been sitting in, and they're getting preserved. And what's nice is in this digital age, you can always add more information later. So as you're going through these pre-printed cards or those main category and year cards, you're assigning groups on those white cards. So you can see here, and I've got this on your worksheet so you can follow along. The next step, it's simply group the photos that are for the same category or the same date and place them behind that associated white index card. And then the next step is simply to sort that labeled white index card with the photos behind the appropriate year card. So now we've got the branches and the leaves. So on the right-hand side, you can see an example of this. We've got 1969 as our main category card. Behind that 1969 card, we've written 1969 August trip to Paris. And then if you can tell, there's some photos behind that. And you're going to continue to create these groups. And now you're getting into the details. You're getting into the leaves where you're really identifying the story. Ideally, at this point, you removed your duplicate photos in poor quality. But as you're going through and identifying, this is another opportunity to kind of say, you know what, these photos really aren't that important, or how many photos do I really need of mom's garden? Let me just keep a few. And you get to make that decision. When we work with clients, we help our clients to cull down their photos as well. And this is the process that we use to do this. So when you are creating these white cards with these specific dates, and you can see examples here, I want you to consider some different topics. So these are notable events to consider. And I've actually included this in the worksheet. Of course, I could probably provide you with 3 pages of notable events and topics, and everybody's is going to be different. If you grew up, if you live in Dubai, and I know there's somebody here that lives in Dubai, your experience might be different than somebody who grew up in Washington, D.C., or somebody who grew up in the Pacific Northwest. But here's some general ideas to keep in mind. So major holidays. Great to identify major holidays because we often want to go back and find those. What about various trips? Those could be a wonderful trip to Paris. Let's say you took a trip to Italy and you want to be specific, trip to Italy-Rome, etc. You can be as granular as you want based on how you want to organize and find your photos later. Sports, whether that be your kids played sports, you played sports, or you attended an event. Professional portraits are great to find because what if you want to search for all of your professional photos? Here at 2000 Paces, we even take it a step further by defining professional sports portraits, professional family portraits, professional school portraits, so we can find those when we need them. Various experiences like trips to the zoo and Disneyland. You can tell I live in San Diego because we've got those pretty common here in Southern California. But various experiences are really important to identify. And then we have what we like to call the milestone events. right? The birth of a child, birthdays, graduations, and awards, your wedding, maybe a couple weddings, maybe family weddings, baptisms, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, that kind of thing are all milestone events. And then there's things like first day of school. In fact, keep an eye on our social media because we're going to be posting some of all of us as children. So now we've made it through the majority of the transformation, right? Of original to organized. We've gathered our photos, we've gathered our tools, we've sorted, organized trash, we've further identified with the leaves. And I'm just going to touch briefly on digitize and preserve because this is the first of many educational presentations you're going to get from other photo organizers around the country and around the world who are experts. And so I don't want to dive into the digitizing, but I do want you to kind of understand how the naming and how this process and workflow will contribute to a successful digitizing project. So again, how will this system of organizing, identifying, naming shape how your digital files will be organized? Well, your organizing system, this is your blueprint for digitizing or scanning, because the labels on each of those white cards is going to be batch named in your digitizing. So all the photos behind that were 1969 August trip to Paris, every one of those photos is going to be named that. So that when you look at your digital files, you're going to be able to either look at your story as you lived it, right, which is chronologically, or you can look for specific keywords and indicators in that file name. So as each photo is digitized, again, you can see on that second check mark, maybe we have the date, the event, the category. It makes your collection clean, consistent, and most importantly, it's going to be easy to search and enjoy. So let's take just a quick look at what that final digital collection looks like. Again, just so you can see what all this energy is going for. So these are just some screenshots of some projects that we've worked on. And you can see these are files that have been digitized based on the workflow I just showed you. So for example, in the upper left corner, it says 2024, 12 December 25 Christmas. So all of those Christmas photos for 2024 were named. Below that, we've got 1978 professional family portrait. So you can see that we didn't add a month or a day, but we can go back to 1978 and see all the professional portraits, or I can simply type the word professional family and find all those professional photos. Other ones are trip to Hawaii. We've got Tom's 55th birthday or Halloween. In fact, I think it was last year that both of my adult children reached out to me, strangely enough, on Halloween and said, "Mom, do you have the photos of us as children at Halloween?" And because I had identified all of the Halloween photos and we used facial recognition, and that's another presentation, I was able to type their names, the word Halloween, and within seconds sent them those photos. Now that all sounds wonderful, but it's this structure and this workflow that's going to help you get to that point. So unfortunately, one of the animations isn't working here, but the idea is that I want you to take that collection you have right now that might feel chaotic, might be all over the house, you're not sure what you have, but we want to get it original to organized. And these are examples of actual projects we've worked on, slides, negatives, memorabilia. Everything has been organized by date and event according to the needs of the client. And it's all been put in these beautiful labeled archival boxes for storage. And these boxes are great. Again, we have a link for those, but I would encourage you to look for archival for long-term storage. Doesn't this look great? Doesn't this feel good and provide you peace of mind? So I want to end before we take questions by just saying, don't wait. The time will never be just right. The reality is I've heard so many people say, I'll get to it someday. And unfortunately, with natural disasters and just life, that day just seems further and further away. So having a workflow, having confidence, whether you've decided after this presentation that you're ready to take this on yourself, or you've decided that you want to hire a professional photo manager, whether that's us or somebody through the photo managers, the idea is that I want you to get started. So I want to thank you. I do hope that this was informative. My contact information's here, and I love getting questions. We've got some QR codes here to order the print photo organizing cards. You can schedule a free phone consultation, or sign up for our monthly newsletter where we just send out stories and tips and tricks. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. I'm going to grab a sip of water and take some questions.
Thanks so much, Rachel, for sharing all of those inspiring tips and information. I know everyone will find value in that. I know I will as well. Maybe organizing my children's photos this year. Before we start the Q&A, I want to tell everyone about an exciting opportunity if you want to take your photo preservation even further. It's called Memory Keepers Live Summit. It's a one-day virtual event on Saturday, September 27th. It's for family historians, memory keepers, and storytellers. And some key highlights are hands-on workshops to protect your printed and digital collections and to prepare for emergencies. We'll have networking, some really great prizes, downloadable resources and session recordings. And then, of course, 10% of our proceeds also go to the Weather Resilience Fund supporting disaster recovery. So I encourage you to scan the QR code on the screen and reserve your spot today. It's also in the description. And so also, if this session helped you today, make sure you give us a thumbs up and comment below what your first step will be in preserving your photos. And now we can take questions. If we have any questions in the chat, we'll go ahead and address those now. So Mary Beth Crocker asked, I have a lot of daguerreotypes and cabinet cards of my ancestors. Do you have any particular ways to address those?
So can you talk specifically? Are they allowed to speak, Mary? Are they allowed to?
No, I don't believe so,
Okay.
but you could just give some context
Yeah,
and then
so
maybe add to the chat.
Absolutely. So when, regardless of the types of photos you have, this workflow should apply. If you're talking specifically about, I just like a little more context if you're talking about digitizing them or if you're talking about the organizing part, but I would say that this workflow has been set up that it works for any collections, right? So again, if you've got some stuff that's for ancestors, that family tree is going to be really important if it comes to the sorting and generalizing them. Now, typically, I recommend whenever possible to organize your photos chronologically, because quite honestly, that's how we live our lives. And years from now, I think it's really important that our descendants can see how we lived our lives, right? And they can watch that journey. But again, if you want to search for certain photos, then it's great to add some context. And so with ancestors, I think it's great to break those into various family trees and groups. If you're talking about the way that you're digitizing, I absolutely recommend that you hire a photo manager that does camera scanning, because they are going to be able to camera scan anything, regardless of the type that it is. And really for those photos too, you want to make sure to use those gloves and really be protective to avoid the oils and stuff. I don't know if I specifically answered your question, so go ahead and throw out more information if I didn't.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. Our next question is Kathy Jones. How would you handle a large 3-foot by 2-foot family tree, hand printed on paper?
Well, if we're talking about one large family tree, Kathy, I assume you're talking about digitizing that family tree. And again, with the camera scanning, so for example, we can scan anything. We've scanned items that are just absolutely very large and it's very high quality. You can also break those into different components and digitally stitch them together. I think that when you have something this large, it's great to do one big scan and then break those down. The other thing is there are various software programs that do OCR, that's character recognition, right? So if you've got items that are written down, let's say there's writing on the back of a card, or somebody's written a story like their own memoir or biography. When you digitize with technology today, it will actually pull words and the characters out so that you can search for those as well. And so that can help transcribe that into your search function.
That's great. Thank you so much. Amazing
Of
information. We have one more question from Jennifer Wright. I would say we have a few more questions, but this is the next one.
Okay, great.
Should I try to organize my husband's childhood photos alongside mine, or should I try to do separate projects?
Great question, Jennifer. There's so many great questions, so feel free to throw them out because there really are no silly questions because everybody's project is unique. So there's a couple different ways you can go about this, and it kind of depends on what you want your final collection to look like. I personally, for my own collection, I organized my photos up until when my husband and I met using this workflow. And then I got a second set of the pre-printed cards for his family and his life up until when we met. And then they all got merged together. So like, here's an example that I wasn't able to show yet. It's very, very heavy, excuse me. But what you could do is you could have all the year cards for your husband up until you met and the year cards for you up until you met. And then you kind of merge those together. Now, some people say, well, it was 1978. Does it really matter? One thing you can do is if you want to merge those together and don't want to do them separately, when you are using your blank white cards, right? You might just say, you're going to put things like Mike's childhood, Mike's 55th birthday, the different information that is going to help find his family versus yours. But typically when we're working with a client, I think it's great to kind of organize each because they're two separate journeys that kind of ended up merging together, right? And the bottom line is, as long as you're using that same workflow, consistent naming, in the end, in those digital files, you're going to be able to find all of them. Now, if you have, let's say, 1982 for you and then 1982 for your husband, those can all still blend together digitally, but it's easier to start with them separate and then blend them than to try and take them apart.
I love that. That's great
Yep.
for organizing photos through your marriage and everything. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Another question we have is from Anna Knapp. How do you add dates to the pictures you scan?
So sometimes these are hard to answer without getting more context. So when you're saying, how do you add dates to the pictures you scan? I'm assuming you're not talking about putting them, are you talking about because you can't answer me. If you're talking about when they get digitized, right? The idea is that when you have somebody scan professionally, or again, if you're scanning, all the information, so let me show you an example here. So this is one that we did for a client, and it says 1994 11 Thanksgiving, right? And that's kind of shorthand, and it represents 1994 November Thanksgiving, just because we don't want to write all of November out, right? Now, when we scan these, and let's say we had a whole bunch of photos, I'll just grab some. So we've got these photos behind it. So we've got these all organized. When we go to scan these photos, all of the photos behind this are going to be called digitally 1994 11 November Thanksgiving. So if you're asking how do you actually assign that digital name, it's going to start with this structure, right? And then that name is going to translate into the file. Now, I think that's what you're asking, but I'll answer another question in case you're asking something else, which is how do you ascertain the dates, right? Which is difficult. And I just want to say that there are a number of ways to do that. Again, you can put those aside to ask family or look at context clues. Oftentimes on the back of the photos, there's a stamp date when it was printed, and that's pretty close usually to when it was done. There's also manufacturing stamps that we use. I also like to use a process, it's kind of a weird name, but I call it braces, bangs, and broken bones. Any idea what that means, Mary? Sounds kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it makes sense though.
Right. You know what I'm getting at, right? There's periods of time where we each have different hairstyles, right? I grew up in the 80s and I had the Aquanet with the hair out to here. Maybe there's times that we have bangs and our hair looks different, or you've got somebody that's got a broken bone, or a period of time. We don't wear braces our entire lives. So there's context clues that you can use to kind of match up photos. So again, as you're going through the photos and you go, I know these are the 1980s. I know I have more information in my other photos. Don't pause and start looking. Put that in the 1980s, and then you take that deeper dive. I hope that answered your question.
I think we have one more question, and then
great.
wrapping up. Robin asks, is it necessary to keep the physical copies of the photos once they're digitized and the digitized copies are saved in a couple of places?
Robin, great question. These are really great questions. So I will tell you, the photos that are in this box are actually from a client that she and I were in the Navy together. And so she gave me permission to use these as an example because she did not want to keep her printed photos after we digitized them. Now, most of our clients, I would say 95% keep those printed photos. And so I'll give you a couple of things to think about. First of all, when you digitize the photos, if you decide, you know what, I don't have room, maybe you're moving into a loft in Ireland and you say, you know what, I don't need all that stuff. Before you throw out any of that print photos, that collection, really look through and make sure those digitized photos are quality and that you've captured everything that you want. Unfortunately, I found many clients that have scanned photos at home and they find out the quality is really low, and then they have to pay for us to redo the whole thing. So make sure you're either working with a professional who knows how to scan them properly, or that you get that education ahead of time. Now, the other thing is, for digital files, you always want 3 copies, and you're going to hear about this throughout the photo managers. So 3 copies might mean you've got them on an external hard drive, you've got them on an online photo storage, and maybe another cloud account, or maybe you've got them on a couple different drives in a safety deposit box. With that said, if you decide to get rid of your print photos, of course you can do that. But what I would like to point out is that when you have all that chaos, right, and I've had clients come in and bring piles and boxes, and they go, I don't think I'm going to want these back after you digitize them, right? I don't want all this back in my house. But when you can go from all that chaos to something like this, where you've got it in these beautiful archive boxes that you can sit out, it takes up a lot less room, you might find that you want to keep those photos. And the reality is, there is something special about going back to the print photos when you can. And you never know what kind of technology is going to come about in the future. So it's a personal decision. I personally like to keep them, but I would wait to make that decision until everything's organized and digitized.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rachel. I know I would love to have all of my photos digitized and archival box.
We'll get you there.
Eventually. Yeah. But thank you so much again for joining us. We really loved having you, a professional photo manager representing your company and the photo managers. And we're really excited for our next session on Friday, all about digitizing your photos so that they last forever. It's at Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and register for the remaining free sessions in September at saveyourphotos.org. It's super easy. Also, if you're interested in taking it a step further, like I mentioned earlier, please make sure to sign up for our Memory Keepers Live Summit. And also, don't forget to snag Rachel's free worksheet full of amazing tips and information and ways to walk you through this entire process that she just so graciously showed everyone. Also, and if you're interested in purchasing her print photo organizing cards, those are a great resource to take you from chaos to categories in a breeze. You can do that through the description, the link in the description as well. And so thank you guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We are really excited to kick off Save Your Photos Month, and we can't wait to see you for the rest of our live sessions on YouTube. Thanks again, Rachel.
Absolutely. And I saw some other questions pop in, so you're welcome to send me an email. I'd love to help, or sign up for a free consultation, and I'll help you get started. And best of luck. Just get started.